Hello and welcome to our roundtable on protecting the value of food presented by Divert. Today we're bringing together thought leaders across the retail, food bank, and technology spaces for a discussion on transformative solutions to tackle the food insecurity crisis. My name is Chris Costanzo and I'm your moderator today. I'm the founder and editor of Food Bank News, which is the nation's only publication to focus on sharing best practices and hunger relief. We have more than 6,000 subscribers who work at food banks and food pantries across the nation. And of course, one of the topics that we regularly hit on is food waste and food rescue. So I'm really excited to hear what our panelists are going to say today. I'm going to let our panelists introduce themselves. First, we're going to go to Cheryl Shondek. Let's start with you. Tell us where you work and what you do.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Chris and Ryan and Tricia. My name is Cheryl Shondek. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Greater Boston Food Bank. I have been here for 9.5 years. Prior to that, I spent over 25 years in the retail business, specific with food, and it's an honor to be here.
Great. How about Tricia Johnson?
Hi, Chris. My name is Tricia Johnson. Happy to be here and joining this wonderful team today. I work for Stop and Shop approximately 32 years plus, and I am the Director of Store Operations, Deployment, Innovation, and Health and Sustainability, and I represent the brand. So happy to be here. Thank you.
Great. And Ryan?
Hi, great. Thanks for everyone for coming together to talk about such an important topic, very important to me. Co-founder, CEO of Divert. We have been in the wasted food industry since 2007. We like to say before it became, I should say so prevalent, and really appreciate, all of the perspectives that we're able to pull together here and really shine a light on what we're trying to tackle.
I have a couple questions to set the scene. The first has to do with food insecurity, which continues to impact about 40 million Americans, and with the rate only expected to get higher because of inflation. Cheryl, can you put that into perspective for us in terms of what you're seeing at the food bank?
Yes, great question, Chris. So at the Greater Boston Food Bank, we continue to see historic levels of need. Our clients are telling us that they continue to go to food banks, continue to reach out to pantries and shelters in order to feed their families. As you know, we are the largest hunger relief organization in New England. We have over 600 member agencies that help us distribute that food. So those soup kitchens, shelters, pantries, they are serving over 600,000 clients a month. Last summer, we released a study that showed 1 in 3 adults in Massachusetts experienced food insecurity at some point during 2021. That's about 1.8 million adults statewide. Staggering statistic. Along with that, we saw SNAP increase to up to 1 million households. So the COVID crisis might have started this surge in food insecurity, but now with rapid inflation, we are hearing from those clients that now more than ever, they need to go to those shelters, soup kitchens, and pantries to feed their families.
Mm-hmm. At the same time, we have a food waste problem. The U.S. generates over 100 million tons of food waste annually, with over 50% going to landfills or incinerators. Tricia, can you talk about how that looks to you as a food industry insider?
Sure, of course. Thank you. And as a brand in a responsible retailer, we recognize coming out of COVID that we needed to really work closely with our Feeding America partners, and we developed and created a detailed health and sustainability strategy that I was happy to be part of in creating it. And food not good enough to eat, however good enough to sell, with specific focus on improving our donations and working with our Feeding America partners, as well as what does that look like from a zero waste strategy and a commitment to really, as a company, as a brand, delivering on our 90% zero waste. we have a meat rendering best practice in place. And our next area of focus is our partnership with Divert and our next steps in the New York and New Jersey trade area. So, as we continue to partner with our communities in the urban areas, we've opened up food pantries at local schools, and that work has been so successful. And we just continue to work with our partners and really the education at store level and making sure everyone knows and understands that we have this great program from a health and sustainability perspective that we can support our local communities and our trade areas. And that's been a big area of work for us this year.
Great. And Ryan, your perspective on these trends?
As we continue to increase the wasted food that we're able to service, I think it brings in awareness. And I think that awareness really started in 2010 when you look at food being pulled out of landfill. If it is a grocery store, it's the dumpster at the store. And Stop and Shop has been doing this probably longer than most anybody in the industry. So they've had some awareness, but then when you look at the ability to implement reverse logistics, and so now it's not going out the back door of the store, it's sitting in the back room of a store. And so we have a bin sitting there. That bin is then brought back to the distribution center, and we're able to analyze what is inside that bin. So I think one of the first reactions when you walk into any one of our facilities, you walk by the bin and the immediate reaction is, wow, we're wasting a lot of food. But I really think that's not understanding the entire picture. If you look inside of grocery, and it's shrink, it's a very important number. Grocery stores are working incredibly hard to reduce wasted food, to get food to food banks. And grocery stores, similar to us, are sort of the end of the supply chain. There can be things that happen all the way at the beginning of that supply chain that affect the value of that food. They are the custodian of really what has happened upstream. So when we think about what we are seeing from managing wasted food across the country, it is how do we take the data, how do we get the artifacts that we are seeing to understand what is happening upstream? Is it the farm? Is it the cold supply chain? Where are these sort of practices potentially not as efficient as maybe they could be? And that's really to support our retail partners, to support what they're doing every day, which is an incredibly difficult task of moving and providing food to such a wide area of people and doing it at a proper value.
A lot of people on this call probably know that the White House recently held its conference on hunger, nutrition, and health, the first such conference in more than 50 years. And the Biden administration put forth a plan to end hunger by 2030. And there were a lot of solutions packed in there. But it seemed to me, and I think to others, that the conversation around food waste was relatively limited. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on whether, is the White House potentially missing out on the potential of this strategy? Tricia, do you have any thoughts on that?
Sure, Chris. At Stop and Shop, our continued focus on health and sustainability and our strategy, we like to call it our journey, if you will, and not a strategy, because we see it as a beginning with just tremendous amount of work that will continue. And we also see that balance between the food insecurities that we just talked about and food waste. So as we continue, as a company to align with our teams and work closely with our partners, our focus will be to continue to increase our donations. When you think about all the organizations that we work with in the 5 trade areas, New England and Mid-Atlantic, we've established those partnerships in those trade areas and warehouses and store locations, and we follow the governance and mandates. So that work will continue. We see it as an opportunity, and we also see the impact and influence that we've made with some of those local communities and our partners, and a lot of great work has been done this year with that alignment.
Cheryl, do we think the White House is giving enough thought into this particular strategy?
Yeah, once again, we were so excited about the White House conference. I mean, what a sign of hope, relative to all of us that are in this business to eradicate hunger. I think that there should have been a subset, or maybe it's another conference on its own, collaborating leaders such as you have here today. The work that Ryan is doing, the work that Tricia and the entire team at Stop and Shop is doing. So I think it's a combination of creating awareness, more collaboration, clearly the efforts of the retail partners. We know that the federal government provides tax deductions for those that donate. What more can we do? So I see another conference convening just with this under the microscope. I'm fortunate to be in the state of Massachusetts. We are a leading state relative to our efforts on food waste bans, but more needs to be done.
Mhm. Yeah. Ryan, any thoughts on the White House conference?
I think Cheryl said it well, that more awareness. I do think that this isn't probably as exciting as maybe other initiatives that people like to talk about. And so when we think about what is happening with people going hungry, if we look at our food supply chain, we are relatively efficient. Barclays put out a study, the developed world versus the undeveloped world. And where is food being wasted in the US? It is at the end of the supply chain, because we do have pre-refrigeration on farms. We do have efficient supply chain. So I do think it's an efficiency conversation. It's feeding people who are underserved, maybe even underrepresented. And so how do we solve that? I do think that there are better incentives. I know Cheryl mentioned tax incentives are in place for food donation, but a lot of retail partners that we work with saturate their tax benefits very early on in the process, because they are managing such large volumes of food. And so how do we better incentivize the extra labor in the back room of a store? How do we incentivize food banks to make that pickup? Because there are logistical challenges. We saw during COVID, we lost a lot of these individuals that volunteer their time to drive to the back of the store to retrieve that food, because this food is within a few days of not being able to be edible, as Tricia had pointed out. So those are all things that need to be discussed at a higher level. And so I do think it was a missed opportunity from the White House. Great to hear the discussion, but missed opportunity. Yeah,
I like that idea, Cheryl, a follow-up conference on that specific topic. These food donation programs between retailers and food banks have been around for a long time. And to Cheryl and Tricia, what traditionally have been the keys to the success of these types of programs? How do you get them to work well?
Yeah, as I mentioned, I joined the food bank over 9 years ago, and we call this a retail donation program, as you had mentioned, Chris. And we were acquiring enough food to feed about or provide about 1 million meals. And in working with over 40 retail brands, and one of them being Stop and Shop, and over 450 stores, and Stop and Shop has 100 in our service area. Last year, we acquired enough food to provide 10 million meals. So I think it's just that collaboration. It's working together. It's teaching, coaching, training, working with partners like Ryan to explain how simple it is that someone has food that is about to expire and go out of code, and we have a soup kitchen, a pantry, or a shelter that is near that retailer, wholesaler, or manufacturer that can consume that food that day or the next day. And it has worked for us. But we need to expand. We need, there still continues to be food waste. The goal is to feed that hungry person when that food is available. So it's mirroring those two opportunities. And again, teaching, coaching, training, it works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Tricia, from your side, what is it that makes these programs work well?
Cheryl, you bring up so many great points, and at Stop and Shop, we would like to continue to create an environment of giving back, right? And what does that mean? And the importance of the plan that we have in place in our journey. How do we communicate that to the stores? And how do we help them understand that although the food isn't good enough to sell, it's good enough to eat? And if you could take that one tub of Nature's Promise yogurt and put it on someone's table tomorrow, or donate baby food that's in code and keep it out of the landfill and make a difference. That's been a big focus on our program this year, last 2 years actually. And it's We onboarded 12 Feeding America partners in over 400 stores in 2 years, which was a huge task. And we did it. We were excited. And we continue to create that alignment with those Feeding America partners. But I think for the stores, it's important to help them understand that donating every day is so important. And we did struggle through COVID and pickups and people fell off a little bit, but people are hungry 7 days a week. We can't decide that we're going to donate Tuesday, Thursday. So we tried to make it very consistent when we put this in place. And the other piece was we also work closely with the veterans and the homeless and youth organizations, as well as our Feeding America partners. So our plan is working. We know we're making a difference, but I think if you said, Tricia, what's the key ingredient? What's the heartbeat? It's the training and the communication and pulling at their heartstrings, say, hey, team, you are making a difference. So let's continue to do this and do it every single day.
And Ryan, what do you see as potential pitfalls that maybe lead to less impactful programs?
I think there is a double-edged sword. If you make a program to keep wasted food out of landfill, which is part of what we strive to do, you could inadvertently make it too easy, more easy than donating, and you lose that path, you lose that stream of edible food keeping itself in that supply chain. So for us, it is everything Tricia said. It is awareness. We are building our data platform out to better understand where is this food going on an individual store basis in a real-time manner. What is the amount of food going to the food bank? What are we seeing at our facilities? What is going into the trash? And we are driving that food to where it is best served. And from a carbon intensity life cycle, humanitarian, it is always keep that food in the supply chain. For us as a business, going deeper, even beyond that, how do we help Stop and Shop with the data associated with those food products? So if there is a healthy donation program, and healthy donation program from our definition it is food that cannot be sold. And so there's a very fine line between it cannot be sold, because we do not want good food pulled off the shelf that can be sold. Stop and Shop needs to have a viable business. And so how do we use data and the awareness and the feedback loops to drive that action inside the store? And those are the problems that we are working to solve today.
Okay, and you guys have all been in the industry for quite some time. It seems collectively decades. How have you seen attitudes around food waste and food rescue change and evolve over time? Cheryl, we'll go back to you to start.
Yeah, I think I applaud, the work that Tricia and her team is doing, because folks are time starved. There are help wanted signs everywhere. So it is incredibly important to continue to communicate and create that awareness. But I think people care. And again, Tricia, during COVID, everything was selling. We're still experiencing those supply chain challenges, but our retailers, wholesalers, and manufacturers were still there for us in the, those that were supporting the food banking world. But leadership starts at the top. And given the commitment that the leaders have in these industries to solve these problems, as Ryan mentioned, of shrink, that is a real issue. And everyone wants to solve the shrink issue, the food waste issue. But it must continue to be listening. The leaders must listen to those on the ground as well in an effort to do what's right. We worked with another partner, and that leader had a call out to the stores every Friday. And one member of the store, as they were expanding their perishable footprint, said, wait a minute, we are discarding too many oranges. What do we do? And that's where we created this partnership of expanded retail donations. And that was an example that happened at a store level that was implemented by the leadership. And it works.
Tricia, how about you? You've been in the food industry for a while. How have you seen attitudes toward food waste change?
I think for Stop and Shop and for our brand, we had to put a story together and help them understand the why this journey, why health and sustainability, and what does it mean? And that's how we started the work that we began just about 2 years ago. It also was helpful with the leadership that supported the work that we're doing. And they said, hey, Trisha, Paul, we need a health and sustainability plan. Would you like to be part of that? And passionate about it. And we said, we're in. And we put this together. So when you have the support of leadership and the ability to have a presence at your leadership meetings and say, this is how we performed in this month, and these were our donations, and here's our zero waste plan, and what's all the recycling work streams, and how do they impact zero waste. But we also felt that they gave us that opportunity to get into the stores and speak to the store teams and help them understand the why, because a plan is a plan, a journey is a journey, but the stores really needed to see the numbers. And when we shared the numbers that Cheryl just talked about of those that are less fortunate than all of us, it really was a great eye opener. And that's how we started our work. And it's been successful. We still have a lot of work to do, but I think another key ingredient is the ability for our stores to develop that relationship with their Feeding America partners, so they know who they are. They know when they come to the stores, they know what they need, and we have a specific detailed menu that we work off of to support the food pantries as well. So it's been great to see the change in thought process and support and guidance.
Yeah, and Ryan, have you seen changes in attitude over the time that you've worked in this space?
As you see these products get wasted, you think about your own food at your house. I think that is just true, as I was mentioning before. As we pull wasted food out of the landfill and you start to look at these food products, you start to understand something better about what's happening. Our position today as the largest processor of wasted food in the US, I would say as a business, we have an incredible responsibility. So we are now given the responsibility to manage these wasted food products. We're doing the best thing we can do at scale, which is keep this food out of landfill from producing methane emissions. We can recover the nutrients associated with this food. We can produce renewable fuels. That's fantastic, and it's exciting, and we're doing that at scale. But what's also happening is we do have a responsibility to create innovative solutions, to understand where is food being wasted in the supply chain, build tools that our retail partners and CPG partners upstream can use that can affect change within their organizations, because the will is there. As an innovative company and bringing technology, it's our responsibility to create those tools so that they can be executed on the front lines where all of this stuff really happens.
Since we're on the topic of attitudes, it seems to me that one of the reasons that we have so much food waste to begin with is because we've created some very high expectations among consumers. They expect their produce to be perfect. I've heard crazy stories about, truckloads of romaine lettuce being thrown away because the leaves were straight instead of curly. Should we be looking to change consumer attitudes so that we don't always have this level of food waste?
For me, for us as a business, this is awareness, of course. Everybody acts on the self. I think when we look at servicing homes and they start to understand where wasted food is coming from at the home that they own, it becomes very personal for them. That is an area that we are looking to push into in markets that we operate in today. So going into the home, how do we bring this data-centric process? So we're going to keep the home, this residential wasted food, out of landfill and give them data to understand, hey, wait a second, you're for a home this size with this many people, you're wasting this many pounds per person versus your neighbor who is doing a better job. And here's how you should be shopping. Here are the buying habits. Here's what your refrigerator should be operating at. And then I do think that brings itself into the shopping behaviors. They go into a grocery store and they now understand, maybe I don't need the absolute perfect banana, the absolute perfect pear. And those behaviors start to matriculate throughout our buying habits. So that's our approach. And I do think it's going to take some time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Right.
Chris, when you mentioned that story about the romaine lettuce, I think back to the farmer and the time, effort, and energy that went into farming that beautiful produce. So somehow we have to find a way to get that to a food bank or find a way to get that to a pantry or a soup kitchen or a shelter, because it will be consumed. And as Ryan mentioned, I think it's just creating that awareness and working collaboratively to help solve these problems and educate the consumer that as something comes to an expiration date, it's still safe to consume and it's still delicious, and providing alternate uses. So Ryan, you had just talked about, that ripe banana. What else can we do with that item as opposed to just making banana bread? Let's provide those solutions to the consumer before we have to throw it away. One thing we're very proud of at the food bank is last year we distributed over 117 million pounds of food, and less than 1% was discarded. But again, that happens over time.
Right. And you brought up the topic or the idea of sell-by dates and use-by dates. Is there, what should be happening around date labeling that maybe isn't yet? Anybody, Ryan, do you want to take that one?
I think there are probably more than a few things. I think the necessity of a date label to protect a brand. If I'm a yogurt manufacturer and I want my food to be the freshest because I don't want a consumer to have a bad experience with my brand, I do think that's part of the challenge. I also think that the standardization behind these labels, there's a long way to go. There's an example working with another fantastic New England business and a data study we did with them to understand what food is leaving their stores. And this is a small retail format, more pharmacy based. And what we found, as example, Tazo teas, we had 2 date codes. It was the produced by and the sell by. And we were seeing these Tazo teas pulled off the shelf 3 years before the sell by, because it was so confusing on the date code. It wasn't explicitly clear what I was reading if you look at the date code. Now, we had some artificial intelligence, some image-based processes that were able to pick this up. We were seeing the abnormality and reporting it back. There's a lot of work to do across the CPG world. All of this is happening upstream. I think it's our responsibility, again, is to discover these, bring them up, bring opportunities like that to Stop and Shop, who does have the buying influence and interest, because it is, at the end of the day, their shrink, their loss. And so how do we help perfect these things? As we keep saying, it is going to take time, and it's awareness and it's measurement and feedback.
Tricia, do you want to add anything to that about date labeling?
Yes, I would love to. So, at Stop and Shop, we're always, ensuring food safety is table stakes for us, right? And, we recognize that rotation and coding and all of those best practices allow us to donate certain categories. And I mentioned baby food earlier, and our ability to donate baby food and code and takes it out of the work stream and lands it on tables. I mean, that was a big win for us. One of my probably biggest accomplishments last year. And when you think about meat and seafood and the fresh categories that are available in real time, as we work with our partners, as an industry leader, coming out of the pandemic, we acknowledge that. We realized that there was an opportunity, and we have a very strict, stringent code dating calendar that we work off of as a company. And we have a menu, I call it the menu, that we provided to the teams, that it's not good enough to sell, but certainly good enough to eat. And it's that education, right? How do we educate? I mean, when something goes out of code, Cheryl, you said it, it's still fresh. You can still eat it. But I think from a consumer perspective, that's something that's an opportunity for all of us. And I think less of a policy, more of an opportunity to educate.
Yeah, I think we all know that food insecurity and food waste is a topic of discussion at COP27, the United Nations Climate Change Conference. Given that level of attention that it's getting, keeping that in mind, I mean, when you look at the topic of food waste and food rescue, what are you most hopeful about these days? What do you think is possible? Where are we headed with this?
It's sort of the hunt of the unique business model that can make, some commercial enterprise out of all of these opportunities. So that's climate change, food insecurity, it's our natural resources, it is time efficiency, labor, that all coming together in a really innovative, unique way that can scale, address the core problem, which is food being wasted. It's not necessarily food waste. That's kind of a nuanced approach on, or it's not necessarily a play on words. It is very meaningful when we think about food leaving that supply chain. So, COP27 and the discussion that's being had on the international level, I think is really mirroring what we're seeing at the White House, as we talked about, that it's not necessarily the right conversation. We're not deep enough into it. It's going to take time, but the momentum is there. And that's our mission, is to bring awareness to the value of food.
Mm-hmm. Cheryl, what are you hopeful about? What do you see happening?
I'm very, very hopeful. I mean, hunger affects everyone, and the Greater Boston Food Bank, with partners such as Divert, such as Stop and Shop, we are here to help. We have to continue to listen. We want to be able to utilize any of these items that may be food waste to one individual, but not to another. And we have to do that together. So I am very, very hopeful that we need to continue to collaborate, because there is no one that I have talked to during my 25 years of working in food retail, or the past 9.5 years here at the food bank, that they do not believe that access to healthy food is a human right. We are all fighting toward the same mission. There is food available. Let's get it to that client that's hungry, and let's work together to do that.
Tricia, anything to add?
Sure. When I think about our work and our strategy and our journey, education, awareness, collaboration, all of those important attributes. But I think making a difference is so important to help the stores understand that you are making a difference. And when we talk about zero waste, and we talk about our food donations and our partners and all the work that's been done, we stress with the teams, we always say to them, our journey and our efforts, it's not one person, it's not one store, it's not one company, but it is one world. And how can we move everybody together as one team and help achieve these goals in this journey that we're all on together? And so we've been stressing that with the teams, and I think the education and the training and the awareness and the why behind the story has been very impactful.
Great. I feel like we've had a great discussion. I feel hopeful about all this now too. I want to thank all of you for participating and for sharing your thoughts on this important topic. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank
Thanks
you,
so much.
everyone.